The frozen body lay crumpled in the snow like a discarded doll, and Nathan Dawson nearly rode past without seeing her at all. His horse, a sturdy bay named Ranger, whinnied and stamped nervously, breath steaming in the bitter December air. Nathan pulled the reins, squinting through the swirling white. The blizzard had come down from the mountains without warning 3 days ago, and he had been checking his trap lines in the high country near Raton, New Mexico, when the storm trapped him. Now, on this fourth morning of 1885, the sky had finally cleared to a pale, brittle blue, and he was making his way back down to civilization. At first, he thought it was a deer carcass. Then he saw the brown fabric of a dress, the pale hand reaching out from beneath a dusting of fresh powder. Nathan was off his horse before he fully registered the decision, his boots crunching through the knee-deep snow. He dropped to his knees beside the figure, his heart hammering against his ribs. A woman. Young, from what he could see of her face, though her lips had gone blue and her skin was the color of old parchment. Ice crystals clung to her dark eyelashes. She wore only a thin dress, completely inadequate for the mountain winter, and one of her shoes was missing. Nathan stripped off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, then pressed his fingers to her throat. For a terrible moment he felt nothing. Then, faint as a whisper, a pulse fluttered beneath his fingertips. "Come on," he said through gritted teeth, though she could not hear him. "You are not dying up here. Not today." Nathan was a big man, 6 feet tall and broad through the shoulders from years of ranch work, and even so it took all his strength to lift her. She was limp as a rag doll, her head lolling against his chest. He managed to get her draped across Ranger's saddle, then swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to hold her steady. The horse picked his way carefully down the mountain trail, and Nathan kept talking to the unconscious woman, as if his words alone could tether her to life. "My cabin is not far now," he said, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. "You just hold on, you hear me? Whatever happened to you, whatever brought you up here, it does not matter right now. You just keep breathing." He had no idea who she was, or how she had come to be alone in the mountains in the middle of winter. The nearest town was Raton, a rough mining settlement that had sprung up along the railroad tracks cutting through northern New Mexico. Beyond that, there was nothing but wilderness, cattle ranches, and the occasional homestead scattered across the vast territory. Women did not simply appear in the high country wearing nothing but a summer dress. The cabin came into view as the sun reached its zenith, a small structure of rough-hewn logs tucked into a protected hollow. Smoke still rose from the chimney where Nathan had banked the fire before leaving that morning. He dismounted carefully, easing the woman down into his arms, and kicked the door open. The interior was warm, blessedly warm after the bitter cold outside. Nathan laid her on his bed, the only bed, and began working to save her life with the methodical competence of a man who had spent years alone in the wilderness. He built up the fire until the room was almost stifling, then turned his attention to the woman. Her dress was frozen stiff in places. He hesitated only a moment before beginning to remove it, knowing that the wet fabric would kill her as surely as the cold. He averted his eyes as much as possible, working quickly, and wrapped her in every blanket he owned. Her feet were the worst. The toes on her bare foot were white and waxy, the early stages of frostbite. He filled a basin with cool water, not warm, having learned long ago that warming frozen flesh too quickly only caused more damage. For hours he worked. He warmed water on the stove and coaxed small sips past her blue lips. He massaged her hands and feet, trying to restore circulation. He heated stones and wrapped them in cloth, placing them around her body. And all the while, he watched her chest rise and fall with shallow breaths, wondering who she was and who had left her to die in the snow. Night fell, and still she did not wake. Nathan sat beside the bed in his only chair, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hands, and studied her face in the firelight. She was beautiful, he realized, even pale and half-frozen as she was. Dark hair fell in tangled waves around a heart-shaped face. Her features were delicate, fine-boned, the kind of face that belonged in a city drawing room, not a mountain cabin in the New Mexico wilderness. "Who are you?" he asked the silent room. "And what in God's name happened to you?" The answer came at dawn. Nathan had dozed off in his chair, his chin dropping to his chest when a sharp gasp jerked him awake. The woman's eyes were open, wide and terrified, the color of storm clouds. She stared at him without recognition, without comprehension, and then she tried to bolt from the bed. "Whoa, easy there." Nathan held up his hands, staying in his chair. "You are safe. I found you in the mountains. You nearly froze to death." She had pulled the blankets up to her chin, her eyes darting around the cabin like a cornered animal seeking escape. "Where am I? Where is he?" "You are in my cabin about 10 miles north of Raton. I am Nathan Dawson. I run a small cattle spread in these mountains." He spoke slowly, calmly, the way he would to a spooked horse. "Who is looking for you?" "No one," she said quickly. Too quickly. Then her face crumpled and she looked away. "Everyone, I do not know, my husband." Nathan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Your husband left you in the mountains. He said I was worthless." Her voice was barely a whisper. "He said if I could not give him a son, I was no use to him at all." "We were traveling through to Colorado, taking the mountain pass. We argued and he told me to get out of the wagon. I thought he meant to frighten me. I got down and he just drove away. That was 2 days ago, I think. Maybe 3. I tried to walk back to Raton, but the storm came." The words hung in the air between them. Nathan felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. What kind of man abandoned his wife in the wilderness? What kind of coward left a woman to die in the snow? "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then seemed to decide he had earned the truth. "Beatrice. Beatrice Keller. Though I suppose I will not be keeping that name much longer. If I am not dead, then I am divorced one way or another." "Well, Miss Beatrice," Nathan said carefully, "you are very much alive, though it was a near thing. Another hour in that cold and I would have found a corpse instead of a woman. Your husband is a fool and a bastard, pardon my language, and you are better off without him." Something flickered in her eyes, a spark of life returning. "He took everything. My bag, my money, even my coat. Everything I owned was in that wagon. Then we will get you new things." Nathan stood, moving to the stove to pour coffee. "Can you drink this? You need to get warm from the inside." She nodded, and he brought the cup to her, careful not to come too close, not wanting to frighten her further. Her hands shook as she took it, and she wrapped both palms around the warmth. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Nathan said simply, "and because no one deserves what happened to you." Over the next week, Beatrice slowly recovered her strength. The frostbite on her toes turned out to be minor, painful but not crippling. Nathan gave her his bed and slept on the floor by the fire, insisting that she needed the rest more than he did. During the long hours while the winter sun tracked across the pale sky, they talked. Nathan learned that Beatrice had grown up in St. Louis, the daughter of a shopkeeper who had died when she was 16. Her mother had remarried quickly, desperate for security, and her stepfather had been eager to be rid of another mouth to feed. When Thomas Keller, a mining speculator passing through Missouri, had offered marriage, Beatrice had accepted, thinking anything would be better than her stepfather's house. She had been wrong. "Thomas was charming at first," she said, staring into the fire. handsome and full of promises about the fortune he would make in the silver mines of Colorado. But after we married, everything changed. He was cruel, vicious when he drank, and he blamed me for everything that went wrong, which was everything. "How long were you married?" Nathan asked. 2 years. 2 long years. When I did not conceive a child, he became convinced I was barren. He said terrible things. She wrapped her arms around herself. I started to believe them, that I was worthless, broken, less than a woman. "That is not true," Nathan said fiercely. "You are not broken, Beatrice. You are strong. You survived in the mountains for days in the middle of winter. You fought to live. That takes more strength than most people have." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Nathan felt something shift in the air between them. In the warm light of the cabin, he could see that her eyes were not simply gray but silver, like moonlight on water. And she could see him, he realized, not just as her rescuer, but as a man. A man with kind brown eyes and work-roughened hands and a gentleness that belied his size. "Tell me about you," she said softly. "You know all my sad stories. What brought you to the mountains?" Nathan poured them both more coffee, settling into his chair. "I came out west 7 years ago after my parents died in Ohio. Cholera outbreaks swept through our county. I was 20 years old and suddenly alone in the world. I had always wanted to see the frontier, so I sold the farm and bought a train ticket. Ended up in Raton, took work on a cattle ranch and saved every penny. 3 years ago, I bought this land and started building my own herd. It is not much, but it is mine." "You built all this yourself?" Beatrice looked around the cabin with new appreciation. The structure was solid, well-made, every log carefully fitted. Shelves lined one wall, holding supplies and books, more books than she would have expected a bachelor cowboy to own. Most of it. Nathan felt his neck grow warm. "I am not much good at the finer things, but I can swing a hammer and stack a wall straight." "I think it is wonderful," Beatrice said, and meant it. "You built a life for yourself. You are not beholden to anyone." "It gets lonely sometimes," Nathan admitted. "The nearest neighbor is 15 miles away. I go weeks without seeing another soul. And yet you fill your shelves with books." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his weathered face. "My mother was a schoolteacher. She made sure I learned to love reading. Out here, books are the only company I have most nights." "What are you reading now?" "Dickens' Great Expectations." "Have you read it?" Beatrice nodded. "Years ago." "I loved it." "Then we can read it together," Nathan said. "If you want, while you recover." And so they did. In the evenings, after Nathan came in from tending his cattle and checking his traps, they would sit by the fire and he would read aloud. Beatrice listened with her eyes closed, letting the words wash over her, marveling at the rough-edged poetry of Nathan's voice as he brought Pip and Estella to life. Sometimes she would open her eyes and catch him watching her instead of the page, and a warmth would bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. By the second week, Beatrice was strong enough to move around the cabin. She insisted on helping with cooking and cleaning, needing to feel useful. Nathan protested at first, but she was stubborn, and eventually he relented. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side in the small space. Nathan would bring in firewood and Beatrice would feed the stove. He would haul water from the creek and she would heat it for washing. They cooked together, their hands occasionally brushing as they passed utensils or ingredients, each touch sending small sparks of awareness through them both. Nathan knew he was falling in love with her. It was impossible not to. She was smart and funny, with a quick wit that surprised him into laughter. She was curious about everything, asking endless questions about the mountains, the cattle, the wildlife. She was brave, never complaining about her injuries or her situation, only moving forward with quiet determination. And she was beautiful, so beautiful it sometimes hurt to look at her. But she was also still legally married to a man who had tried to kill her, and Nathan had no idea if she felt anything for him beyond gratitude. He kept his feelings locked away, afraid that any expression of them would frighten her, would make her feel obligated or trapped. She had escaped one terrible marriage. The last thing she needed was pressure from her rescuer. Beatrice, for her part, was engaged in her own internal struggle. She found herself thinking about Nathan constantly, watching him when he did not know she was looking. She noticed everything about him, the way his hair curled at the nape of his neck, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the careful gentleness of his large hands. She felt safe with him in a way she had never felt safe with Thomas, in a way she had never felt safe with anyone. But was what she felt real, or was it simply gratitude mixed with proximity? She had been so wrong about Thomas. How could she trust her own judgment now? And more than that, what did she have to offer Nathan? She was a woman with nothing, no money, no possessions, legally tied to another man. She would bring him nothing but trouble and complications. The tension between them grew with each passing day, unspoken but palpable, filling the cabin like a gathering storm. The storm broke on a cold February morning. Nathan had gone out early to check on a pregnant heifer, and when he returned 2 hours later, his face was grim. Beatrice knew immediately that something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, setting down the bread dough she had been kneading. Nathan pulled off his hat, turning it in his hands. There were tracks around the herd, boot prints. Someone was watching the cattle and watching this cabin. Beatrice felt ice flood her veins. "Thomas, you do not know that. Who else would it be? He has come back for me." Nathan crossed the room to her in 3 long strides, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. Even if it is him, I will not let him take you. You are under my protection now. He will have to go through me." "You do not understand what he is like," Beatrice said, her voice shaking. "He is vindictive and cruel, and he does not forget slights. If he has come back, it is only to finish what he started or to punish me for surviving. Then he will find that you are not as defenseless as he believes." Nathan released her shoulders, moving to the corner where he kept his rifle. He checked that it was loaded, then pulled down a shotgun as well. "I want you to stay inside today. Keep the door barred. If anyone comes, anyone at all, you do not open this door unless you hear my voice." "Where are you going?" "To ride the property line. If someone is watching us, I want to know who and why." Beatrice caught his arm as he moved toward the door. "Nathan, please be careful." He looked down at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I have too much to lose to be careless," he said quietly. "I will be back before dark." He was gone before she could ask what he meant. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Beatrice tried to keep herself busy, kneading bread until her arms ached, scrubbing the already clean floors, mending Nathan's shirts with needle and thread he had brought her from Rattan. But her mind kept circling back to the tracks in the snow, to the idea that Thomas might be out there, waiting. What would he do if he found her? Drag her back to the wagon, back into the nightmare of their marriage? Or would he simply kill her for the humiliation of having to come back at all? Either option filled her with dread. And then there was Nathan, riding around the mountain alone, searching for a man who might very well ambush him. The thought of Nathan hurt, of Nathan killed because of her, was unbearable. When had he become so essential to her? When had the thought of losing him become worse than the thought of losing her own life? She knew the answer. She had known for days, maybe weeks. She loved him. She loved Nathan Dawson with his gentle hands and his kind eyes and his shelves full of books. She loved the way he read to her by firelight and the way he always made sure she took the warmest seat by the stove. She loved his quiet competence and his fierce protectiveness, and the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was something precious. The realization settled over her like a blanket, warm and terrifying in equal measure. She loved him, and if Thomas killed him, it would be her fault. The sun was sinking toward the mountains when she heard hoofbeats outside. Beatrice grabbed the shotgun, her heart hammering, and positioned herself behind the door. "Who is there?" "It is me," Nathan's voice came, muffled through the heavy wood. "I am alone." She unbarred the door and pulled it open, and relief flooded through her so powerfully that her knees went weak. Nathan was safe, unhurt, already swinging down from his horse. "Did you find anything?" she asked as he came inside, bringing the cold with him. "More tracks heading east toward the main trail. Whoever it was, they are gone now." He stamped snow from his boots, then looked at her more closely. "Are you all right? You are pale." "I was worried," Beatrice admitted. "I thought he might have hurt you." Nathan set his rifle aside and took her hands in his. "It would take more than Thomas Keller to stop me from coming back to you." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Beatrice looked up at him, at this good man who had saved her life and asked nothing in return, and suddenly she could not hold back the feelings anymore. "Nathan, I need to tell you something." "I know," he said softly. "I know what you are going to say, and you do not have to say it out of gratitude or obligation. You do not owe me anything, Beatrice." "That is not what I was going to say." She tightened her grip on his hands. "I was going to say that I love you." "I love you, Nathan Dawson. And I think I have loved you since the first moment I woke up and saw you sitting by my bed. I know it is complicated, and I know I am still married, and I know I have nothing to offer you but trouble. But I needed you to know. If Thomas is out there, if something happens, I needed you to know." Nathan stared at her, and she watched emotions flicker across his face too quickly to name. Then, with a sound that was half laugh and half sob, he pulled her into his arms. "Beatrice. God, Beatrice. I have loved you since I found you in the snow. I have been terrified to tell you, terrified you would feel trapped or pressured. I want you to stay, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you want to be here. Because you want to be with me." "I do," she whispered against his chest. "I want to be with you. I want to build a life with you. I want everything with you if you will have me." He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "I will have you any way I can get you. We will figure out the rest. We will get you a divorce. We will make sure you are free of him legally. And then, if you still want me, I will marry you proper. I will give you my name and my heart and everything I have." "I want you," Beatrice said fiercely. "I want all of that." Nathan bent his head and kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Beatrice melted into him, her arms winding around his neck, and felt something break open in her chest. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not pain and fear and walking on eggshells, but warmth and safety and coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "We should go into Rattan tomorrow. Find a lawyer, start the divorce proceedings. The sooner we make this legal, the better I will feel." Beatrice nodded, then hesitated. "What if Thomas contests it? What if he tries to claim I abandoned him?" "Let him try," Nathan said grimly. "We have the truth on our side. He left you to die in the mountains. There are laws against that, even out here. Any judge with sense will grant you a divorce." They rode into Rattan the next morning, Nathan on Ranger and Beatrice on a gentle mare he had borrowed from a neighbor. The town had grown since Beatrice had last passed through, new buildings springing up along the main street to service the railroad and the miners. It was a rough place, full of rough men, and more than a few heads turned to watch as they rode past. Nathan took her straight to the office of Henry Morrison, a lawyer who had helped him with the land purchase for his ranch. Morrison was a dapper man in his 50s with shrewd eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He listened intently as Beatrice told her story, making occasional notes on a piece of paper. "This should be straightforward," he said when she finished. "Abandonment and cruelty are both grounds for divorce in the New Mexico Territory. We will need to file a petition with the territorial court and serve notice to your husband. That may be the tricky part. Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" "He was heading to Colorado," Beatrice said. "The mining camps around Leadville, I think." "I will send inquiries through the proper channels," Morrison said. "In the meantime, I will file the petition. It may take several months for everything to be finalized, but you should be free of him by summer." "Several months." Beatrice felt Nathan take her hand under the table, his grip strong and reassuring. They could wait a few months. After everything they had been through, a few months was nothing. They were leaving Morrison's office when Beatrice heard a voice that froze her in place. Well. Look what crawled out of the snow." She turned slowly. Thomas Keller stood in the street, flanked by two other men, rough-looking characters with guns on their hips. He looked exactly as she remembered, handsome in a cold, sharp way, with pale eyes and a smile like a knife. "Hello, wife." Nathan stepped in front of Beatrice instantly, his hand moving to the revolver at his belt. "You need to walk away, Keller, right now." "Or what?" Thomas laughed, a sound without humor. "You will shoot me in the middle of town, in front of witnesses." "I do not think so, friend. That woman is my wife, legally bound to me, and I have come to collect what is mine." "She is not property," Nathan said, his voice low and dangerous. "And she is not going anywhere with you." "I think the law would disagree. I have a marriage certificate that says otherwise." Thomas looked past Nathan to Beatrice, and his smile widened. "I am surprised you survived, darling. I thought for certain the cold would take you. But here you are, looking healthy and well-fed. This cowboy has been taking good care of you, I see." "You left me to die," Beatrice said, finding her voice. "You abandoned me in the mountains in the middle of a blizzard." "I did no such thing. I simply told you to get out of the wagon for a moment so we could discuss things calmly, but when I turned around, you had wandered off. I spent days searching for you." Thomas spread his hands in a mockery of innocence. "How was I to know you would be foolish enough to get lost in a storm? You are lying. Prove it. It is your word against mine, and you are a woman who has been living alone with another man for weeks now." "How do you think that will look to a judge?" Thomas's smile turned cruel. "Come along, Beatrice. We are going to Colorado, and we are going to forget this unpleasant incident ever happened." "She is not going with you," Nathan repeated. "She has filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment and cruelty. In a few months, she will be free of you legally." "A few months is a long time," Thomas said softly. "A lot can happen in a few months, a lot of unfortunate accidents. Ranches burn. Cattle stampede. Men get shot by claim jumpers or horse thieves. It is a dangerous territory out here, Dawson. I would hate for anything to happen to you." The threat hung in the air, naked and ugly. Nathan's hand tightened on his gun, and Beatrice saw the two men flanking Thomas tense, ready to draw. If shooting started here in the middle of town, people would die. Nathan might die. "Stop," Beatrice said, stepping out from behind Nathan. "Just stop. Thomas, I will make you a deal. You sign the divorce papers willingly. Swear you will leave Nathan and his ranch alone, and I will not press charges against you for what you did in the mountains." Thomas laughed again. "You think you can press charges against me? You think anyone will believe you?" "I believe her," a new voice said. Sheriff Coleman, a weathered man with iron-gray hair and a star pinned to his vest, stepped out of the crowd that had gathered to watch the confrontation. and I am inclined to investigate any claims of attempted murder in my territory, especially when they involve a woman being left in the mountains during a blizzard." Thomas's smile faltered. "You have no proof?" "I have a witness who will testify he found Mrs. Keller half frozen to death, wearing only a dress, miles from any shelter. I have the testimony of the lady herself. And I have my own eyes, Keller. I saw you ride through here 6 weeks ago with a woman in your wagon, heading up the mountain pass. I saw you come back down alone 2 days later, not looking too concerned about her whereabouts." Coleman's hand rested on his own gun, casual but unmistakable. "Now, I think the lady made you a fair offer. You can sign the papers and ride out of here free and clear, or I can arrest you right now and let a judge sort it out. Your choice." For a long moment, Thomas did not move. Beatrice could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing his options. Then he shrugged, the movement elaborate and dismissive. "Fine. She wants a divorce, she can have one. God knows she was more trouble than she was worth anyway, barren and useless." "Watch your mouth," Nathan said dangerously, but Beatrice put a hand on his arm, staying him. "Let it go," she said softly. "He is not worth it." Thomas signed the papers in Morrison's office 20 minutes later, his signature angry and jagged across the page. Morrison witnessed it along with Sheriff Coleman, making it legal. Thomas threw down the pen when he was finished and looked at Beatrice with pure venom. "I hope you are happy with your cowboy, Beatrice. I hope you enjoy your little life in the mountains. You were meant for better than this, and you have settled for less." "No," Beatrice said calmly. "I have finally found better. I just did not recognize it while I was married to Les." Thomas left Raton that afternoon, his 2 hired guns trailing behind him. Beatrice watched from the window of Morrison's office as they rode out of town and felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had been carrying for 2 years. She was free. Legally, officially free. Nathan came to stand beside her, sliding an arm around her waist. "Are you all right?" "I am perfect," Beatrice said, and realized it was true. "Can we go home now?" "Home," Nathan repeated, testing the word. Then he smiled, the real smile that transformed his face. "Yes, let us go home." They returned to the cabin in the mountains, and life settled into a new rhythm. Beatrice was no longer a patient recovering from injury, but a partner, a companion, a woman building a life. She learned to milk the cows Nathan kept for fresh dairy, learned to gather eggs from the chickens, learned to ride well enough to help him move cattle between pastures. She planted a garden in the spring, coaxing vegetables from the rocky soil. She sewed curtains for the cabin windows and braided rugs for the floor, turning the rough bachelor space into a home. And through it all, she and Nathan grew closer, learning each other in 1,000 small ways. They learned that Nathan was an early riser who liked to watch the sunrise, while Beatrice preferred to stay up late reading by lamplight. They learned that she could not carry a tune to save her life, but he had a surprisingly good singing voice. They learned to communicate with looks and touches, a private language built from proximity and affection. In June, Morrison sent word that the divorce was final. Beatrice stood in the cabin, holding the official document, and felt tears prick her eyes. She was Beatrice King again, the surname she had been born with. She was her own person, beholden to no one. "Hey," Nathan said, wiping away a tear with his thumb. "Why are you crying? This is good news." "These are happy tears," Beatrice assured him. "I am just overwhelmed. 6 months ago, I thought I was going to die alone in the snow. Now I am standing in a home I helped build, holding proof that I am free. It feels like a dream." "Then I have another dream for you," Nathan said. He dropped to one knee and Beatrice's breath caught. "I know we have only known each other half a year. I know some would say we are rushing into this. But Beatrice King, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You are smart and strong and brave and beautiful, and I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife truly and completely?" "Yes," Beatrice said, the word breaking on a sob. "Yes, Nathan. Yes." He slipped a ring onto her finger, a simple band of gold he had bought weeks ago in Rattan, carrying it around in his pocket while he waited for the right moment. It fit perfectly. Everything about him fit perfectly. They were married in August of 1885 in the small church in Rattan, with Sheriff Coleman and his wife standing as witnesses. Beatrice wore a new dress, pale blue cotton with lace at the collar, the first new dress she had owned in years. Nathan wore his good suit, looking uncomfortable and handsome in equal measure. The ceremony was simple, the words familiar, but when Nathan kissed her as his wife, Beatrice felt like her entire life had been leading to this moment. They spent their wedding night in the cabin, their cabin now, and made love for the first time with tenderness and care. Nathan was gentle, always gentle, mindful of her past and her scars. And Beatrice discovered that this, too, could be beautiful when it was born from love instead of obligation. The years that followed were good years, full of hard work and simple joys. Nathan's ranch grew slowly but steadily, his herd increasing as he proved himself a competent cattleman. Beatrice kept the books and managed the household, and together they built something solid and lasting. They made friends among the scattered ranchers and homesteaders of the region, becoming part of the community. They hosted dinners and attended barn raisings and helped their neighbors in times of trouble, as their neighbors helped them. In the spring of 1887, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She told Nathan over breakfast on a bright May morning, watching his face carefully, mindful of Thomas's cruelty about her supposed barrenness. But Nathan's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. He whooped and picked her up, spinning her around the cabin until she was dizzy and laughing. "You are sure?" he asked, setting her down carefully as if she might break. "You are really sure?" "I am sure," Beatrice confirmed. "The doctor in Rattan confirmed it yesterday. We are going to have a baby, Nathan. In November, he thinks." Nathan cupped her face in his hands, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You are going to be the most amazing mother. Our child is so lucky to have you." "Our child is lucky to have you," Beatrice corrected. "You are going to be a wonderful father." The pregnancy was not easy. Beatrice suffered terrible morning sickness in the early months, and the summer heat made her miserable. But Nathan was there every step of the way, holding her hair when she was sick, bringing her cool water and damp cloths, rubbing her feet when they swelled. He read to her every night, his hand resting on her growing belly, and they planned for their future. They decided to add a room onto the cabin, a bedroom for the baby. Nathan worked on it through the summer and fall, determined to have it finished before the birth. Beatrice helped as much as he would allow, holding boards while he hammered and painting the walls a cheerful yellow. Their son was born on a cold November night in 1887, after 12 hours of labor. Nathan held Beatrice's hand through all of it, white-knuckled and terrified, while the midwife from Rattan barked orders. And when the baby finally emerged, red-faced and screaming, Nathan wept openly. "A boy," the midwife said, placing the squalling infant in Beatrice's arms. "A healthy boy." Beatrice looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect face and his shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand in her chest. He was real. He was hers. He was theirs. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." They named him Samuel after Nathan's father. Sam was a happy baby, quick to smile and slow to fuss. He had Nathan's brown eyes and Beatrice's nose, and both of them doted on him shamelessly. Nathan would sit by the fire in the evenings with Sam in his arms, reading aloud from his books, as if the baby could understand Dickens or Twain. Beatrice would watch them, her heart so full it ached, and marvel at how far she had come. 2 years later they had a daughter, Emily, who arrived in the spring with a lusty cry and a head full of red gold curls that matched neither parent. "She must take after my grandmother," Nathan said, enchanted by this fierce little creature. Emily was more demanding than Sam had been, wanting to be held constantly and protesting loudly when put down. But she was also affectionate and funny, and they loved her completely. The cabin was full now, full of children and laughter and life. They added another room and then another, the structure growing organically as their family grew. The ranch prospered. Nathan hired hands to help with the cattle, good men he trusted. Beatrice started selling her vegetables and preserves in rattan, making a little extra money that they saved carefully. In 1892, when Sam was 5 and Emily was 3, they had another son, Michael. He was a quiet baby, thoughtful and observant, content to sit and watch the world around him. The children adored each other, Sam taking his role as big brother seriously, always watching out for his younger siblings. Beatrice would sometimes stop in the middle of her day, washing dishes or hanging laundry or pulling weeds from her garden, and just look around. At the cabin that had become a house, at the land that stretched away to the mountains, at her children playing in the yard while Nathan worked with the cattle in the distance. And she would remember the woman she had been, frozen and dying in the snow, certain her life was over. That woman had been wrong. Her life had not ended in the snow. It had begun there. One evening in the summer of 1895, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Beatrice and Nathan sat on the porch they had built the previous year. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Nathan had his arm around her, and she leaned into his warmth, contentment settling over her like a blanket. "You ever think about what your life would have been like?" Nathan asked. "If I had not found you that day." "Sometimes," Beatrice admitted, "but not often. That woman feels like someone else now, someone I used to be in another life." "I think about it," Nathan said quietly. "I think about how close I came to losing you before I ever met you. If I had ridden a different trail that day, if I had left an hour earlier or later, if Ranger had not spooked and made me look, you would have died and I would have gone on with my life, never knowing what I had missed. But you did find me," Beatrice said, turning to face him. "You saved my life, Nathan, and then you gave me a reason to live it." "You saved mine too," Nathan said. "I was so lonely before you came. I did not even realize how lonely until suddenly I was not any more. You brought light into my life, Beatrice, you and the children. You made everything mean something." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held 10 years of love and gratitude and partnership. When they pulled apart, both smiling, Beatrice rested her head on his shoulder and looked out at the mountains that had almost killed her and had instead given her everything. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Nathan replied. "Always and forever." The years continued to unfold, bringing joys and challenges in equal measure. Sam grew tall and serious, with his father's steady competence and his mother's intelligence. When he turned 18 in 1905, he told his parents he wanted to go to college back east, to study engineering. Beatrice was terrified to let him go so far away, but Nathan convinced her it was important to let him follow his dreams. They used their savings to send him to school, and he made them proud, writing letters home full of excitement about his studies. Emily turned into a beautiful young woman with a will of iron and a gift for medicine. She apprenticed with the doctor in rattan and eventually became a nurse, the first in the region. She never married, claiming she was too busy saving lives to bother with romance, though she had suitors aplenty. Michael stayed on the ranch, loving the land and the cattle as much as Nathan did. He took over more and more of the daily operations as Nathan grew older, allowing his father to slow down and enjoy his grandchildren when they began to arrive. Because Sam did come home eventually, in 1910, with a degree in engineering and a wife, a sweet-faced girl from Boston named Grace. They settled in Raton, where Sam helped design and build the infrastructure for the growing town. They gave Nathan and Beatrice 3 grandchildren, 2 boys and a girl, who spent their summers on the ranch learning to ride and rope and work cattle. The house in the mountains was always full of family now, especially during holidays and summers. Beatrice cooked enormous meals and told stories about the old days, though she still did not talk much about the time before Nathan found her. That part of her life felt distant, unimportant, a prologue to the real story. In 1915, Nathan and Beatrice celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. It was a warm August evening, much like the night they had married, and their children organized a party. The whole community came, friends and neighbors from miles around, filling the house and the yard with music and laughter. At one point, Beatrice found herself standing at the edge of the celebration, watching Nathan dance with Emily while Sam played guitar and Michael sang. Her grandchildren chased each other through the crowd, shrieking with joy. The sun was setting over the mountains, the same mountains where she had almost died 30 years ago. "Are you all right, Mama?" Emily asked, coming to stand beside her after the dance ended. "You look sad." "Not sad," Beatrice said, wiping at her eyes. "Just overwhelmed. 30 years ago I had nothing. No family, no home, no hope. And now I have all of this, all of you. It feels impossible sometimes, like it must be a dream I am going to wake up from." "It is real," Emily said, hugging her mother. "You built this, you and Papa. You built a life and a family and a legacy. We are all here because of you." "We are all here because of your father," Beatrice corrected. "He saved me in more ways than one." But later, when the party had ended and the guests had gone home and it was just Nathan and Beatrice again, sitting on their porch in the gathering dark, Nathan took her hand and said, "You saved me too, you know. I was just a lonely cowboy with a little ranch and no reason to build anything bigger. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. You gave me a family. Everything good in my life started the day I found you in the snow. We saved each other," Beatrice said simply, "and we built something beautiful together." "Yes," Nathan agreed, pulling her close. "Yes, we did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the house, a grandchild laughed. In the distance, cattle lowed softly. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of summer grass and wood smoke. This was home. This was family. This was love, real love, the kind that weathered storms and grew stronger with time. Beatrice thought about the terrified woman who had stumbled through the snow all those years ago, certain she was going to die alone and unmourned. If she could go back and tell that woman what was waiting for her, just a little farther down the mountain, would she believe it? Probably not. It was too good, too perfect, too much like a fairy tale. But it was real. Every moment of it was real. The pain and the joy, the struggle and the triumph, the love that had grown from the ashes of despair. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, his voice soft in the darkness. "Everything," Beatrice said. "Our life, our children. How grateful I am for every single day I have had with you." "We have been blessed," Nathan agreed, "more than I ever dreamed possible." "Do you think we will have many more years together?" Beatrice asked. It was a question she had been afraid to voice, but they were both in their late 50s now, and time was beginning to feel precious in a way it never had before. I think we will have exactly as many years as we are meant to have, Nathan said. And I intend to make the most of every single one of them. To wake up next to you every morning, to sit on this porch with you every evening, to watch our grandchildren grow, to grow old with you, Beatrice. That is all I want. That is all I have ever wanted since the day I found you. You have me, Beatrice said, her voice thick with emotion. For as many years as we are given, you have me, completely and forever. Nathan kissed her then, and she tasted the salt of tears on his lips, though she did not know if they were his or hers or both. It did not matter. Nothing mattered except this. The two of them together, still in love after 30 years, still grateful for every moment. They lived 20 more years together, Nathan and Beatrice Dawson. 20 years of watching their grandchildren grow and their children thrive. 20 years of sunrises over the mountains and quiet evenings on the porch. 20 years of partnership and love and the deep contentment that comes from a life well lived. Nathan died in 1935, in his sleep, with Beatrice beside him. He simply did not wake up one spring morning, his heart having given out peacefully in the night. Beatrice held his hand and wept, grieving the loss of her great love, but grateful too. Grateful that he had not suffered. Grateful for the 50 years they had shared. Grateful that he had found her in the snow all those years ago and given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. She lived 3 more years without him, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. She told them stories about Nathan, about the ranch, about the old days in the wild frontier. She made sure they knew where they came from, the legacy of love and hard work and resilience they carried in their blood. Beatrice died in the winter of 1938 in the same cabin where Nathan had brought her so many decades ago. Her family was around her, holding her hands, telling her they loved her, and as she closed her eyes for the last time, she was not afraid. She was going to see Nathan again. She was going home. They buried her beside him on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains where their story began. The headstones were simple, just their names and dates, but they did not need anything more. Their legacy was not in stone or words. It was in the family they had built, the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their love forward into the future. And sometimes, on cold winter mornings when the snow lay deep on the ground, people swore they could see 2 figures standing on the hill by the graves. A tall man and a slender woman, holding hands, looking out over the mountains together, waiting, perhaps, for lost souls who needed saving, or simply enjoying the view, grateful for every moment they had been given together. The story of Nathan and Beatrice Dawson became legend in that part of New Mexico. The cowboy who saved a woman from the snow and found his soulmate. The woman who survived the impossible and built a life from nothing. Their descendants still work the ranch today, still tell the story to their children, still honor the memory of 2 people who loved each other completely and built something beautiful that would last long after they were gone. It was a love story for the ages, born in the most unlikely place at the most unlikely time. Born in the snow and the cold and the very brink of death. Born from kindness and courage and the simple human need for connection. It was a testament to the power of love to heal, to transform, to create something lasting from the ashes of tragedy. And it all started with one simple act. A cowboy who saw someone in need and did not ride past. A choice to help, to care, to save a life. From that one choice, everything else flowed. A family, a legacy, a love that transcended time and death and became something eternal. That is the true power of love in the end. It endures. It survives. It creates ripples that spread outward through time, touching lives and changing futures in ways we can never fully predict or understand. Nathan and Beatrice knew this. They lived it. And their story, passed down through generations, continues to inspire anyone who hears it. A reminder that it is never too late to find love. That rescue can come from the most unexpected places. That from the deepest cold and the darkest moment, warmth and light can emerge. And that sometimes, the worst day of your life is actually the first day of something beautiful.